You'll have to bear with me because I'm sick today, so I can't quite hear myself or others as well as I wish I could. But my name is Linley Beckner, and I'm presenting my senior thesis entitled quiero, the legalization of same-sex marriage in Argentina. The question that I'm analyzing is what made Argentina's legalization of same-sex marriage possible? Law 26618 altered the civil code of Argentina to include same-sex couples in the rights of marriage, adoption, and inheritance previously reserved only for different-sex couples. It was voted on July 15th by the Senate and signed by President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner on July 22nd this summer. I'm using primary sources, which are interviews that I conducted when I studied abroad in Argentina with local activists, and my secondary sources are various books, newspapers, magazines, etc. And throughout the project, I've taken an interdisciplinary approach, including human rights, international relations, social movement theory, and gender studies. I've broken my analysis into 4 parts. First, historical pathways. Second, culture and society. Third, social movement theory. And finally, an overall theme of human rights to come to the conclusions that I've reached. To briefly overview these historical pathways, first, in 1853, in the National Constitution of Argentina, homosexuality was non-criminalized. I make the distinction from decriminalized because it wasn't criminalized previous. In the 1950s and 60s, the gay rights movement arrived in Argentina, and the importation of stone walls out of the closet and into the street, ideologies and themes began to infiltrate the local movement. In 1976 to 1983, there was a military dictatorship which caused massive human rights violation, including the kidnap, torture, murder, and disappearance of over 30,000 people who have come to be known as los desaparecidos. And this was largely supported by the Catholic Church, and priests played roles in counseling the military at this time. In 1994, major international human rights treaties were incorporated into the Argentine Constitution, such that human rights weren't simply some theoretical floating international thing out there that wasn't so tangible, but instead human rights became a question of the Constitution, such that violations would be a violation of the state's Constitution. And 2003 to the present are the Kirchner presidencies. First there was Nestor Kirchner, the late Nestor Kirchner, and now his wife Cristina is president. And for the two of them, human rights were and are essential to their policies, and they are both big gay rights supporters. President Cristina has played a huge role in the latest bits of the legalization efforts by speaking out against the church, by being a voice in the debate. Through social and cultural context, these historical pathways were embraced such that they could be utilized later by the social movement. The first is machismo, which provides, which is the hegemonic masculinity, and it provides sufficient challenge for sexual minorities as well as, for example, feminist movements in the area. But it also has opportunities within it for reinterpretation. It used to be much more chivalrous, whereas now it's more chauvinistic. But the opportunities are there, and they can be embraced, and they have been embraced and challenged by the sexual minorities movement. Also, there was a group called the Madres de la Plaza de Mayo, which were the mothers of the people disappeared by the military during the dictatorship. And from that point forward, they began to protest and demand truth and justice. And through this, they redefined what was public and private, because it was the traditional thing for a woman to stay in the house and not to be protesting, not to be a voice that was out in the streets shouting. So they redefined what was acceptable in the public arena, as well as shaping the role of women. And finally, the Catholic Church, which is also sufficient enough opponent of local efforts, was delegitimized for its role during the dictatorship, such that they were already known for violating human rights at a very sensitive time of history, and so their outrage and whatever else against same-sex marriage suffered a blow based on their past. And furthermore, from the political standpoint, there is separation of church and state, but also separation of church and party, such that legislators, religious or otherwise, were not voting by religious motivations. And the social movement, which from my perspective is largely responsible for the legalization of same-sex marriage. First, I placed it under existing social movement theory, which doesn't explicitly examine sexual minorities movements because they're new and they're different and they're unique, but nonetheless they have the formation of identity, networking, and collective action that shape what a social movement is and the ways in which that particular type of movement is distinct from something else, like a consciousness movement. Second, I interviewed local actors from the organizations listed here to find out how they worked, what tools they used, and I found that all of them across the board utilized human rights in their efforts. And they all talked about how they used them and that it was a significant part of their efforts and their ways of attaining goals for their communities. So in Argentina, I found that change happens with local movements that are empowered by international networks, particularly gay networks. There's a lot, like I said, of importation of ideas starting in the 1960s forward with what gay networks and gay movements were doing elsewhere in the world. So there's a lot of changing and learning and passing skills and tools from one to the other. And at this point, Argentina is quickly becoming a forerunner in accomplishing goals, so they may be the one doing the teaching from here on out. And the conclusions and recommendations that I've come to are, first, officials do what they believe they should do for their country. And in Argentina, by the time that it was up for debate, enough officials believed that they should legalize same-sex marriage. The argument of President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner was that this is something that is important to our democracy. It is a great threat to our democracy if we allow the majority to oppress the minority and take away their rights, which was a significant stance and one that was followed by enough legislators that it is now law. And how did it happen that same-sex marriage, seemingly of all things, would be such a defining moment for Argentina? And it came down to a mix of national pride and danger. And what it meant to be Argentine is the treatment of minorities and not allowing the majority to oppress them. So that's largely a part of national pride, but also there's an element of danger, where human rights exist because all humans have them. If some humans are denied human rights, then they can't be human rights, and the entire foundation of the system is threatened. Therefore, if at any point the Argentine nation were to say, it's okay if we oppress this group, they are taken back to the place where many of them are immediately thinking of a military dictatorship where it was okay to murder 30,000 people, and that's not a road that they ever want to go down again. So there is sufficient enough danger of threatening human rights and its position in the country. And this human rights legacy, there's a phrase, nunca más, which means never again, which is, I believe, the principal reason why Argentine legislators went along with the legalization of same-sex marriage, because there was this promise of never again will we oppress the minority, and this was just one more realization of that promise. And one thing that has come up throughout the debate and throughout my project is marriage really the answer? What about other sexual minorities that don't directly benefit from same-sex marriage? Yes, it's one right and it's an important right to a lot of people, but is it just assimilation with a heterosexual norm? There are all of these questions floating around. And I've found that it is the answer for Argentina at this point, because it is the provision of the same rights with the same names, and it is legal national recognition of the equality of the same-sex couple and of homosexuals. And from that point forward, further rights can be recognized, such as the relationship between children and their same-sex parents, and so on. So it is a jumping-off point, even if it is not understood that way by all sexual minorities who are not necessarily outright from the get-go benefiting from the marriage. And finally, it matters, same-sex marriage matters in Argentina and beyond, because Argentina is only the 10th country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. So it is a statement, it's a precedent, it's a challenge to others, and it's a foundation for other rights, as I mentioned. And finally, for non-discrimination to exist, there must be all rights for all. For anyone to have equality, everyone has to have equality, or no one is equal. And I would like to thank all of these people, especially John Western and Christian Gundermann, for advising me throughout this project. And I would like to thank you for being here and for listening. And does anyone have any questions?